Good morning, everybody.
Good morning. You know what I like about this morning?
It's nice and cool?
No, you actually saved me some coffee. I mean, even if it is yesterday's coffee and I had to nuke it, I still got coffee.
Wah, wah, wah. Hope everyone's doing good on this Friday morning. Oh boy, my goodness. Kind of difficult to know where to begin, isn't it?
Yeah, because we've got that Watchtower study article coming up that we're going to refocus on once again.
Yeah.
Kim and I were very well aware of this article, what Watchtower has said.
We mentioned it in a previous video,
Yes.
but we really didn't focus on the article itself until we started getting a lot of emails from PMOs and current Jehovah's Witnesses.
Yeah, and so we're going to take another look at this article, and we're going to point out some things that are not so obvious, even to some ex-Jehovah's Witnesses out here that think this is this is just a regular article. No, this is Watchtower's, I would dare to say, most dangerous article that they could put out there if the Jehovah's Witness really focuses on what's in the article and they can recall what was said by their governing body members months ago, maybe even years ago, because the clues have always been there, but now it's more devastating than what you Jehovah's Witnesses will even think it is. And I find it interesting too, Kim, that this article is going to be studied what I think is going to be the height of the convention season. And if you're going to the convention when this particular article is being studied, guess what? It's just going to be glossed over and you're not going to really understand what Watchtower is telling you.
You're only going to get like a 15 or 20 minute summary, and I bet they're not going to mention some of the things in these paragraphs that we found.
Yeah, and the sad thing is it's not going to give the PMOs a chance to raise their hand and maybe out themselves.
Make comments.
And so we're just going to talk about this.
Yeah. Now, I want to mention that I finally had a chance to watch the interview with Barbara Anderson and with XJW 5th. And I'm going to put the link, I'm going to pin it to the top of the comments. If you haven't seen it yet, I would recommend it. She says some things in there that she's never said publicly before, even talking about one of the governing body members, like Ted Jarvis.
Yeah.
And, you know, I didn't know that. But I did find a conversation with him and someone else about child abuse in the Beastzilla. You know, our beast.
Mm-hmm.
And so when I get a chance, you know, I'm going to put that up on our channel because it's very revealing, you know, knowing that he had an accusation against him and what he is saying in this conversation. But first of all, I want to mention that, you know, Barbara Anderson is a friend of ours, and we had the privilege, well, her and Joe both.
Her and Joe both, and Joy.
Yeah, we've had the privilege of having dinner and spending an evening with Barbara and Joe, and they are very sweet people, and they've been through a lot,
Yeah.
you know, like most of us. But in this interview, like I said, I would recommend watching it because I noticed several things in it, and we may possibly, you know, bring up some clips from this interview with some information that we know at a later date. But first, you know, we wanted to bring out this article, and like I mentioned, we're wanting to bring this out now because we've had several emails, and
for those that are not at your summer conventions, you're going to have an opportunity to study this in the Kingdom Halls, and this is the goose that laid the golden egg.
Yeah.
Because it's very telling.
Now, at the end of the interview, Barbara mentions that some were criticizing her in the XJW community for saying this article was big, you know, and to them it was like no big deal. No, this article is huge.
very huge. It's very telling, and it's self-condemning of the governing body.
And when you read it, carefully and see these words they use, oh my God, it's huge. But it's study article number 19 on page 8, and it's called Love and Justice in the Face of Wickedness. Now, I find it interesting that they use those words because this wickedness is right in their organization.
And they admit it.
Yeah. Yeah. And Watchtower has been allowing wickedness in their God Jehovah's house. And, just like that scripture says, your house is abandoned to you.
Your house
That's what
is abandoned.
Jesus, told the people at that time. Your house is abandoned to you. Well, we can say the same thing.
Yeah,
Your house, Watchtower, is abandoned to you.
Because people are leaving. People are leaving. And one reason why I think an article such as this is so dangerous, because, Watchtower knows. Watchtower watches Kim and Mike videos. They hear what we're saying. They know the term PMO, physically and mentally out. Now, if you're one of these PMOs that are, staying in to hopefully wake up one of your family members, and you put your hand up and, give a negative comment or a comment that's not supposed to be parroted from the paragraph, you very well could be outing yourself. That's dangerous for some. Now, here's the other angle of danger. If you don't speak out, then Watchtower still knows they control you through fear because you're afraid to speak out. So it's one of those damned if you do, damned if you don't type articles. So you're going to have to decide for yourselves, what do you love more? Being captivated with fear or the love of freedom and righteousness?
Yeah.
It's a dangerous article.
So before we get into the article, let's play these clips from a few years ago, and then I've got a comment about them, and I'm sure you've got a comment too.
I'm never. Well, it's very seldom that I'm at a loss for words when it comes to this Watchtower Babble crap society.
Oh yeah. So here's the clips.
Another way we can contribute to the oneness, rejecting false stories that are designed to separate us from Jehovah's organization. As an example, think about the apostate-driven lies and dishonesties that Jehovah's organization is permissive toward pedophiles. I mean, that is ridiculous, isn't it? If anybody takes action against someone who would threaten our young ones and takes action to protect our young ones, it's Jehovah's organization. We reject outright such lies.
The apostate-driven lies.
Now, do you recognize, Mr. Jackson, and in asking this question, let me make it clear, I'm not suggesting it's peculiar to the Jehovah's Witness organization. There are many, many organizations in this position. But do you accept that the Jehovah's Witness organization has a problem with child abuse amongst its members?
I accept that child abuse is a problem right throughout the community, and it's something that we've had to deal with as well.
And do you accept that it's presented, I withdraw that, do you accept that the manner in which your organization has dealt with allegations of child sexual abuse has also presented problems?
There have been changes in policies over the last 20 or 30 years where we've tried to address some of those problem areas, and by the fact that we've changed the policy would indicate that the original policies weren't perfect.
And you accept, of course, that your organization, including people in positions of responsibility like elders, are not immune from the problem of child sexual abuse?
That appears to be the case.
And do you accept, Mr. Jackson, that many of the efforts that are being made by different people and organizations to highlight the issue of child sexual abuse and try and find solutions are genuine efforts to improve the situation?
I do accept that, and that's why I'm happy to testify.
And that such efforts are not necessarily an attack on your organization or its system of beliefs?
We understand that too.
You described earlier in your testimony that the work of this Royal Commission is beneficial. Do you accept then that the Royal Commission's efforts are genuine and well-intentioned?
I certainly do. And that's why we came into the Royal Commission hoping that collectively something would come forward that would help us as well as everybody else.
And would you disagree then with anyone who said that the efforts to highlight and deal with child sexual abuse in the Jehovah's Witness Church is engaging in apostate lies?
I guess that's a broad question, because sometimes those who make these accusations make many other accusations as well. But let me assure you, the person making the accusation is not the main thing. The main thing is there some basis to the accusation? And if there is some way that we can improve, the governing body is always interested in seeing how we can refine our policies. You see, Mr. Stewart, could I just emphasize, as a religion, two very strong things we feel. One is we try to keep a high moral standard, and secondly, there's love among the organisation. So we want to treat victims in a loving way.
The apostate-driven lies.
And that's my favorite little clownlet. Now, do you guys remember what he said? Apostate-driven lies. They're telling you, Jehovah's Witnesses, that all of this is apostate-driven lies. Remember, Jehovah's Witnesses, apostate-driven lies.
And then the second clip was Jackson before the Australian Royal Commission admitting that yes, they even have the problem in their organization, and they're doing their best, to change these policies to protect children and stuff. But the reason I played these is because look at what they're saying. And when we get into this article, first thing I thought of, so is lying?
Who's lying?
This was from 2016. It was a morning worship. So if these were apostate-driven lies back then, he had to have been lying in view of this article now, and what Barbara Anderson is talking about in this interview, because she mentions when the article, I believe it came out in like 93, 94, about child abuse, Watchtower was flooded with letters of people's witnesses saying, oh, I was abused, how refreshing, that they're going to address this. And they really were overwhelmed and didn't know what to do about this. And we've seen from past history, in the past, 2 decades of what they did, which wasn't much.
No, it really wasn't much. Now, you also have to keep in mind, too, Jehovah's Witnesses, that when you really get into an article like this, you have to kind of look at what's really been going on with the organization and why some things why Watchtower's hand has been forced. Because look at the flip-flop on the blood fraction doctrine. So did they flip their position on that because they wanted legal recognition in another foreign country? Well, we can't give you legal recognition, unless you let your members take blood, life-saving blood. So now Watchtower comes out and flips. Well, we did say back in 1962 that blood fractions are against God's law, but now it's a conscience matter. Oh, thank you for whatever country you gave us legal recognition. Is that why they flipped on voting? You see, Jehovah's Witnesses for centuries would not become part of the world, and part of the world is, exercising your civil rights, your constitutional rights in voting. Oh, Jehovah's Witnesses don't vote because we're no part of the world. Well, now Watchtower comes out with another little dumbass article that says, well, voting is now a conscience matter. And we all did the research and we all recognized that was so they could get legal recognition in a country. Is an article like this based on trying to get legal recognition in a country? Or is this article telling you, Jehovah's Witnesses, hey, your house is abandoned to you and we're going to be running to Argentina or some country where there's no extradition to the United States?
Yeah. Well, it made me think of all of the Jehovah's Witnesses and apologists who have been defending Watchtower and calling all of the apostate liars, you know, and even elders within the organization who said, oh, child abuse is an isolated case.
Yeah, right.
Really?
But,
This article just proves all of you liars.
well, you know, like I said in the previous video, Jehovah's Witnesses, this organization is laughing at you because while you got, you know, my favorite little clown saying, oh, these are apostate-driven lies, you know, yada, 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 that now becomes very demoralizing and dehumanizing, especially for you Jehovah's Witnesses that say, oh, the Australian Royal Commission, these were actors hired by apostates just to deceive us. No, Watchtower is now admitting, and we're going to focus on a word that you Jehovah's Witnesses are not going to really pay attention to because you think you know the meaning of the word.
Yeah. All right, to the article. Now, the theme scripture underneath the title of the article is Psalms 5:4. You are not a God who takes pleasure in wickedness. No one bad may remain with you.
That would include those that manufacture lies and the lies coming out of the mouths of your governing body. Now, let's not also forget what that one idiot said. We're still roving about.
Loesch.
We're not inspired. We're still roving about.
Whereas Jesus' teachings and the written word of God are inspired, the faithful and discreet slave is not inspired, although it champions the truth. Nevertheless, the faithful slave provides spiritual food. Whereas in the first century there was supernatural knowledge available for apostles and Bible writers, in the time of the end, Jehovah does not bestow this miraculous gift anymore, as explained at 1 Corinthians 13:8. Although there is no divine inspiration today, still Jesus leads his people progressively through the services of the faithful slave. Jesus trusts that the imperfect faithful slave will do its best to convey spiritual food. Do you also trust the slave? Whereas the truth of God's word does not change, our understanding of the truth does change because we are not perfect yet. We understand more about the truth today than Christians in the first century. Do we keep up with the progressive understanding of truth? Daniel was told, many will rove about, and the true knowledge will become abundant. This is a gradual process. We are still roving about.
Then you don't have the truth if you're still roving. If you're still looking, then you don't have.
Now, I'm going to read the first paragraph because this is the usual public statement they make to the world.
Exactly.
Jehovah God hates all forms of wickedness. How he must hate child abuse, an especially repugnant wicked deed. In imitation of Jehovah, we as his witnesses abhor child abuse and do not tolerate it in the Christian congregation. Talk about talking out of both sides of their mouth.
Well, yeah, because these are apostate-driven lies.
Now,
How Jehovah must hate liars too, right? I mean,
well, that's one of the 7 things he finds detestable.
Well, but see, it's repeated twice, isn't it, in that set of
False
scriptures?
tongue.
False tongue.
Yeah. All right, now I'm going to read paragraph 3 here because this was one of those that just screamed at us.
And this is the most dangerous paragraph to the PMOs, and then this is the most dangerous paragraph to Watchtower, because Watchtower is telling you guys they're done.
Yeah. Sadly, child abuse is a worldwide plague. And true Christians have been affected by this plague.
True Christians? You mean Jehovah's organization has been plagued, affected by this plague?
So right there, they're admitting that this is a plague and that true Christians have been affected by this plague. I'm going to read the rest of the paragraph and then I've got some definitions here for you. Why? Wicked men and impostors abound, and some may try to enter the congregation.
Okay, when you have a governing body member saying these are apostate-driven lies, yada, 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 who's the imposters? Who are the wicked men? Who are the imposters? Do you know what imposters means? Actors. They're actors, people.
In addition, some professing to be a part of the congregation have succumbed to perverted fleshly desires and have sexually abused children. Let us discuss why child abuse is such a grave sin. So they're still using the word sin instead of crime. Then we will consider how elders handle instances of serious wrongdoing, including child abuse, and how parents can protect their children. So all of you JWs and apologists, like Darrow, that have been defending Watchtower now look like discredited liars and idiots. Now, when I seen the word plague, most of us think of like an epidemic, the plague back in the Dark Ages in, Europe and stuff like that. But
how many of you Jehovah's Witnesses are going to take the time to look up what the word plague so you can actually completely comprehend and understand what's going on in front of your very faces?
So, I thought, well, epidemic, like right now in this country, there's an epidemic of measles. Well, then you hear on the news that it's only, about 200-300 cases.
It's only a few hundred cases.
To me, that was not an epidemic.
No, and it's not a plague.
Yeah. So I went to the dictionary, and this is the definition of epidemic. An affecting or tending to affect a disproportionately large number of individuals within a population, community, or region. At the same time, typhoid was an epidemic. Excessively prevalent. Epidemic laughter. Like in a contagious sense.
You mean like some of my laughing in these videos about the Watchtower Bible Craft Society?
An outbreak of disease that spreads quickly and affects many individuals at the same time. An outbreak of epidemic disease. So that's why, I wanted to get the definitions of this, because that's the definition of epidemic. Now, plague.
Hey, you Watchtower, you have got to realize what a horrible mistake you used in choosing
that word.
The word plague.
Yeah. Definition of plague. A disastrous evil or affliction, calamity. A destructively numerous influx or multiplication of a noxious animal, infestation, a plague of locusts. You mean like vermin?
Vermin.
An epidemic disease causing a high rate of mortality, pestilence. A cause of irritation, a sudden unwelcome outbreak, a plague of burglaries, because they're using these examples in a sentence. To smite, infest, or afflict with, or as if with disease, calamity, or natural evil. To cause worry or distress to. So when they use that word
calamity,
plague, I personally feel they are admitting that this plague of child abuse within their organization has devastated them.
It's disastrous. See, the thing is when you think about natural disasters, focus on the word disaster. Let's say you have a mudslide and it wipes your house right off the foundation, yada, 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 and an earthquake hits a city, becomes disaster. It levels all the buildings to the point to where it cannot be recovered. Watchtower is telling you because they have this disastrous plague, they can't recover. They're done. It's over with. Walk out the door and shut the door behind you because they cannot recover from the plagues of child abuse, because it's not just a local plague, friends, it's worldwide. It goes beyond the definition of epidemic.
Yeah, it's a plague.
Now, you've got to ask yourselves, how long has Watchtower had this plague? All the way back to the inception of, well, let's go ahead and change the identity of who and what we are. Let's go ahead and now become an online religion like the 700 Club. If you guys have been with us long enough, you will know that the very minute they started jw.org in their, in their little TV online broadcasting, I did a video and compared them exactly to the 700 Club. Did they know it back then? You've got to ask yourselves. I even challenged my own mother in a letter. So what now, Mom? Are they going to become like the 700 Club, an online religion? Well, guess what we're hearing? We're hearing that Watchtower is so frustrated right now that they don't know what to do, and that frustration is causing them to use words that are giving you guys your freedom.
Yeah. Now on page 9, they have a subheading, a grave sin. And talks about a sin against the victim. And they say children must be protected from such a wicked deed, and those who have been victimized by it need comfort and help. And I'm glad they're saying they need this, but it's a little too late, too little. Because, how many decades has this been going on, and they have been, saying, oh, well, if you talk about this or report it, we're going to disfellowship you. And I don't care what they say. That is what the elders were telling some of these victims and their families, because I know some of them personally for years, and that's what they were saying.
And what kind of help are you going to get? Because you all know as well as we do, PMOs and Jehovah's Witnesses, that you can't go to a psychiatrist because they're going to unindoctrinate you. Again, damned if you do, damned if you don't. So what do? You just sit down, shut up, and you continue to suffer in silence. You have got to recognize this is your freedom we're talking about. Watchtower has used the word plague. It's devastated. They're telling you they have been devastated because of this child abuse. And like I said before, for a corporation like Watchtower, they've only got one of two choices. One of them you see exercised. We're going to become now an online religion like the 700 Club. And the other choice is to file bankruptcy. And guess what? From a legal corporation perspective, they can't do that until they get rid of all of their assets, because if they file bankruptcy right now, the courts are going to say, wait a minute, you guys have got too many assets.
Too many lawsuits against you right now.
Yeah, and you've got too many assets. You need to get rid of your assets before you... Well, what are the assets?
Liquidate them.
Liquidate them. Get rid of your kingdom halls. Guys, meanie, teakle, parson. I don't know how many times I have to keep pointing that out to you guys. To you Jehovah's Witnesses. It's right there.
Now, paragraph 6, a sin against the congregation. When someone who is part of the congregation becomes guilty of child abuse, he brings reproach on the congregation. You mean the victim and their family doesn't? Especially if they report it? Because that's what I've been hearing for years.
Exactly. Why would you bring reproach on Jehovah's name? Or like when those two idiot elders came here and tried to grill us, at the very beginning, when they found out I showed my brother some subliminal images in Watchtower. Why would you do that? I didn't put them there, guys. I didn't do that. Watchtower did.
Yeah. Okay, about towards the end of the paragraph, the last sentence or two. We do not tolerate in our midst individuals who unrepentantly, that's the operative word,
That's the operative word.
unrepentantly commit wicked deeds and who bring reproach on the good name of the congregation. Which means that if they are repentant, they're forgiven and still allowed in the congregation without anybody knowing.
So who's gonna hold these guys as being unrepentant manufacturers of liars? Because remember, these are all apostate-driven lies, friends. Who's gonna hold them guilty?
So if a pedophile is repentant, then they're welcome with open arms and the congregation is not warned so that they can repeat offend.
Oh, there's more coming.
Now, paragraph 7, a sin against the secular authorities. But nobody reports these. About a third of the way down, if someone in the congregation becomes guilty of violating a criminal law, such as by committing child abuse, he is sinning against the secular authorities.
Now it's a crime. A paragraph or two prior, it
was a sin.
It was a sin. Now it's a crime? Do you guys not see the lies? The inconsistencies coming out of the mouth of these governing idiots?
Calm down. Breathe.
But you Jehovah's Witnesses have got to understand how devastating an article like this is. And unfortunately, the vast majority will be at their little district conventions not comprehending the value, the freedom placed in this article, the lies that are also in front of you.
Okay, going on. While the elders are not authorized to enforce the law of the land, they do not shield any perpetrator of child abuse from the legal consequences of a sin. And there it's a sin instead of a crime.
Wow! What is it?
The sinner reaps what he has sown. Paragraph 8, above all, a sin against God. And I'm not going to cover that because we all know what they say that, you know. Paragraph 9. Over the years, Jehovah's organization has provided an abundance of scriptural information on the subject of child abuse. For example, articles in the Watchtower and Awake have discussed how those who have been sexually abused can deal with emotional scars.
If you don't believe what we say, just go back and check out what we've said. That's circular reasoning, guys.
So on page 10, at the end of paragraph 9, elders have received detailed scriptural training on how to handle the sin of child abuse. The organization continues to review the way congregations handle the sin of child abuse. Why? To make sure that our way of handling the matter is in harmony with the law of Christ. What about the law of the land in reporting these? Mandatory reporting. You know, go ahead.
And how is this now apostate-driven lies? Do you see how demoralizing an article is like this to you Jehovah's Witnesses? Because your organization, your governing idiots are all laughing at you right now because they're going to put out an article like this and they know damn well you guys are still going to believe these are apostate-driven lies.
I don't think they care. The next subheading, handling instances of serious wrongdoing. About halfway down. When elders handle, well, I'm just going to start at the beginning. When elders handle any matter involving serious wrongdoing, they keep in mind the law of the Christ requires that they treat the flock with love and do what is right and just in God's eyes. I'm just going to say it here. The law of Christ in the Bible, there's no way it would have covered all of this. So now you need to follow the law of the land with the mandatory reporting. As a result, they have a number of concerns when they receive a report of serious wrongdoing. The elders are primarily concerned with maintaining the sanctity of God's name. And there it is. And that's what they have been doing all of these decades. They don't want to bring reproach on Jehovah's name. And so they're primarily concerned with maintaining the sanctity of God's name. No, your primary concern should be with the child.
Yeah. And here again,
and protecting the congregation.
Yeah, and here again, you Jehovah's Witnesses don't know how to separate Almighty God in that name from the organization. So when they say, sanctifying or protecting the value of God's name, what they're really saying is protecting the organization. This is loaded language, and they can do this because you can't separate.
Paragraph 11. In addition, if the wrongdoers are part of the congregation, elders are concerned with trying to restore him if that is possible.
If that's possible.
And then they go on to talk about, this person is spiritually sick and they no longer have a healthy relationship with Jehovah. So they want to restore him to the congregation? What is wrong with you guys? Oh my God! Your primary concern should be protecting the congregation and protecting these children.
Well, but they don't protect the congregation and they don't protect the children.
And let the secular authorities who are trained to handle this, handle it. Paragraph 13. Do elders comply with secular laws about reporting an allegation of child abuse to the secular authorities? Yes! No, they don't! In this state of New Mexico, it's mandatory reporting, and they are required. Elders are required to report it to the secular authorities. I know of 3 cases in this state in the past decade where it was not reported. So don't tell me that you report these to the secular authorities. You don't. And I know of 2 cases in Arizona and Maine that were not reported to the secular authorities. And the one in Arizona is still running loose in your congregation. Wow. In places where such laws exist, elders endeavor to comply with secular laws about reporting allegations of abuse. No, they don't. Such laws do not conflict with God's law. Then why don't you report them all?
That's right. Because, see, when you hand it over to the secular authorities, it gets reported in the newspaper. And then everybody knows. But you know what, Watchtower? It doesn't matter. Because when we find out about it, it gets reported on YouTube. And then everybody still finds out about it.
Yeah. So when they learn of an allegation, elders immediately seek direction on how they comply with laws about reporting it. And there you have it. They're not telling you in detail. They call their legal department. Now, in this interview that Barbara Anderson did, it's XJW 5th channel, at one point she says that basically members were getting bad legal advice from their legal department.
And that's why they're in the trouble they're in now.
And this is why they're in the trouble they are now.
Yep.
Now, paragraph 14. Elders assure victims and their parents and others with knowledge of this matter that they are free to report an allegation of abuse to the secular authorities. The cases I know about, they were never told they can report it to the secular authorities.
And then they were threatened. If you do, why would you want to bring such reproach on Jehovah's name?
Exactly.
On the congregation.
But what if the report is about someone who is a part of the congregation and the matter then becomes known in the community? Should the Christian who reported it feel that he has brought reproach on God's name? No.
But you do!
The abuser is the one who brings reproach on God's name. So why haven't the elders been telling the victims and their family this all along?
Again, this is loaded language that you Jehovah's Witnesses are going to be in fear of using, because you know deep down in your hearts of hearts that if you do this, you're going to be ostracized, and then your family members are going to start shunning you, whether you're disfellowshipped or not, because you brought reproach on Jehovah's congregation.
Well, I am going to give Watchtower a little bit of credit, because this is a good thing, and it's about time. But I'm also going to say it's a little late. They should have been doing this all along.
See, there again, it's another one of these dangerous articles.
Yeah. Now, this is another one of those articles that just screamed at us. Paragraph 15. In the congregation, before the elders take judicial action, why are at least 2 witnesses required? This was huge. This requirement is part of the Bible's high standard of justice. When there is no confession of wrongdoing, 2 witnesses are required to establish the accusation and authorize the elders to take judicial action. Now, I know we've mentioned this several times. You know, where were the 2 witnesses when we were disfellowshipped? It was on hearsay from his mom. They didn't produce any evidence. They didn't produce 2 witnesses, but they were very quick to disfellowship us and throw us out of the congregation when we didn't show up for our judicial meeting. So why are they saying, why have they always had it to where the pedophiles, and these poor children who have been abused, need these 2 witnesses before they'll do anything, or a confession? Ugh.
But yet, here's the contradiction, Jehovah's Witnesses. Apostate-driven lies. Who lied? You've got a Watchtower article now that says your organization suffers from a plague. That's not apostate-driven lies no more. Where you've got thousands and thousands of witnesses that are now telling you this man does not qualify to be on their governing body.
Going on with the article now, this is the part that was huge, that, screamed out at me just like the word plague.
Plague.
Does this mean that before an allegation of abuse can be reported to the authorities, 2 witnesses are required? No.
There you have it.
So that means the 2-witness rule and the judicial has absolutely nothing to do with it getting reported. This requirement does not apply to whether elders or others report allegations of a crime. And there we have the word crime again.
So what is it, Watchtower? A crime or a sin? Because you've used 2 conflicting words throughout this article. So what you're doing is you're leaving your Jehovah Witness members that are still fully indoctrinated confused. Is it a sin? Is it a crime? Is it a crime? Is it a sin? I don't know.
So I have a question after I read this part in paragraph 16. When they learn that someone in the congregation is accused of child abuse, elders endeavor to comply with any secular laws about reporting the matter and then conduct a scriptural investigation. And this is my question to the elders. Have you been taught in your kingdom, ministry schools for elders to report this? Because I haven't heard of this before. We've been in contact with elders, and they haven't brought this up, that they are now being instructed to comply and report these allegations to the secular authorities. So I'm interested in that. Is this another lie? Okay, at the end of paragraph 16. In addition, the elders remain alert regarding the alleged abuser to protect the congregation from potential danger. So what do they do to protect the congregation?
What do they do?
Paragraph 17. What is the role of the judicial committee? The term judicial does not mean that the elders judge or rule on whether the abuser should be punished by the authorities for breaking the law. The elders do not interfere with law enforcement. They leave criminal matters to the secular authorities. What about that elders letter years ago where it said there's a time to keep quiet and not to divulge any information to secular authorities that you don't need to?
Well, what about the Australian Royal Commission when you've got those 2 idiot elders up there from the branch saying, we destroy letters, that's what we're instructed to do, so you do interfere with lawful investigations.
Paragraph 18. This one is another telling one. When elders serve on a judicial committee, their role is spiritual or religious. Guided by the scriptures, they judge whether the abuser is repentant or not. If he is unrepentant, he is expelled. An announcement is made to the congregation. If he is repentant, he may remain in the congregation. However, the elders will inform him that he may never qualify to receive any congregation privileges or to serve in any position of responsibility in the congregation. Now, in that interview, Barbara Anderson talks about this, of, when they changed that. And that was interesting. out of concern for the welfare of children, the elders may privately warn the parents of minors in the congregation of the need to monitor their children's interactions with the individual. When taking such measures, the elders are careful to maintain the privacy of those hurt by the sin.
Sin or crime? There again, there's another contradiction in terms. Watchtower, is it a sin? Is it a crime? That JW, like my mother sitting there, oh, I'm so confused. Is it a sin? Is it a crime? All you're doing is just confusing. Well, that's why I said decade, a long time. They're nothing but confusionists.
But I focus in on the word the elders may.
Well, this is where we need to really focus in on this. Go ahead.
Because, so is this left to the elders' discretion? So if it's a buddy of theirs, they're not going to say anything.
A childhood amigo, like we saw in, Wisconsin, you've got this little group of elders. They all grew up together. They all went to school together. They're not going to rat their amigos out. So what are they going to do? They're going to protect. So they may choose. Wow.
So, if I was a PMO in that congregation, this would be when I raised my hand during this Watchtower study and say, okay, so what guarantee do I get, to protect my children? Are the elders going to let me know that there's a pedophile in this congregation? So I think this should be mandatory, not a may warn.
Well, here again, you Jehovah's Witnesses have got to recognize the implication right here. I would put my hand up and say, until you guys take assured measures to protect my children, because you guys, you elders, are not going to tell every ministerial servant and or every pioneer brother who organizes the car group for midweek activity, you're not going to tell them, don't put brother so-and-so in a car group with kids. You ain't going to do that. So you PMOs, anybody, you need to say, you know what, until you guys take affirmative action to protect my kids, I'm never going out in service again. Because you are not guaranteeing the safety of my children.
Now the last subheading is how to protect your children. And they've got a little page here with their articles and videos and stuff on how to protect your children.
But it all sounds good until the car groups are made for your, morning out in service, when that uninformed ministerial servant, that uninformed pioneer who organizes the group, that don't know who is the pedophile or child abuser in your congregation. It all sounds good, but it don't work.
Now paragraph 19. Who have the responsibility to protect children from harm? Parents do.
Oh, so there you go. I'm not going out in service no more, guys, because you will inadvertently put a child abuser in a car group with my child. Ain't gonna do it.
Well, if you're going to put the responsibility on parents to protect their children within your organization, Watchtower, then arm them with facts and information. Instead of the elders may warn parents, warn the parents in every congregation that has a pedophile or someone who has even been accused of this horrible crime. Warn them. Give them the information they need to protect their kids. And I hope every single Jehovah's Witness who is a parent puts this together and say, wait a minute, if they're making the responsibility mine, well, look at last year's convention. The guy that gave the talk about protecting your children. And, we've seen that talk for what it was. They were trying to warn the Jehovah's Witnesses within the organization that they had this plague, because he says, don't even allow your children to go to the back rooms or bathroom by themselves. That should have warned everybody that this was a plague in their organization.
And a plague is devastating, isn't it, Watchtower? It's devastating to you.
Yeah. It is your responsibility to safeguard the trust What can you do to protect your children from abuse? So parents, it's your responsibility. You know now they have this plague in their organization, so they've put the responsibility on you, and they're basically washing their hands of this
I
problem.
was just going to say that. You know what this reminds me of? Pilate washing the guilt off of his hands for crucifying Christ. Jehovah's Witnesses, do you see what they're doing? You have your freedom right here. You've got it. They've used the word plague. They can't recover from this. It's so devastating. They can't recover. They have to completely rebuild. That's why we'll give everybody the link to jw.org. And now they're telling you it's your responsibility. The only way you Jehovah's Witnesses with children can exercise full responsibility, you have a God-given right to raise your kids the way you seem fit. Leave the organization. Because this is what they're telling you. If your kid gets raped by another elder or someone coming in here, another predator, it's your fault.
For not protecting your kids.
For not protecting your kids. They have washed their hands. And the only thing that brings to my mind why they are washing their hands from it, because they're all but done.
Paragraph 20. First, educate yourself about abuse. Learn about the kind of individuals who abuse children and the tactics they use to deceive them. Be alert to potential dangers. You can't tell what a pedophile looks like. There may be signs, if someone is being overly nice to your children, and there was one in our congregation in Cottonwood that would give candy to all the kids, and all he wanted in return was a hug. So here, I'll give you this candy, but you give me a hug. I mean, that to me, that was really strange. So whenever my daughter would go up to him, I would be right there with her, holding her hand.
That's right.
And there was times he wanted to take her out in service with him and his wife. I never would allow that by herself. I would go with her.
Yeah.
And I watched her like a hawk. I would not let her alone. And it's funny because I always had these, my spidey sense would always be tingling with things like this in our congregations. And Mike was always, like,
I put too much trust in him.
He's like, you're just being silly, and
overly cautious.
Overly
you trust
cautious.
The brothers.
And because, you had a horrible upbringing by your father, you just have issues. And come to find out that everyone, my spidey sense went off, ended up being a pervo in our congregations.
Yeah. But there's also something about this paragraph, Jehovah's Witnesses, that you also have to learn to identify. It says, first, educate yourself about abuse. Educate yourself when you're being blatantly lied to. Because this now is spiritual abuse. They're abusing you mentally because you do not know how to identify when you're being lied to. Is it a crime? Is it a sin? Is it a sin? Is it a crime? No, I think it's a crime. No, I think it's just a sin. It all depends on how you want to protect the crime. You're being blatantly lied to by these clowns, these idiots.
Now, the last sentence in paragraph 20, it says, remember that in most cases the abuser is someone the child already knows and trusts. Now, as Jehovah's Witness parents, what are we told? There's all these articles and talks about trusting your elders. Your shepherds are there to lovingly guide you. Trust your elders. Trust your elders with your life. His mom even made the comment, years ago, that she would trust the elders implicitly with her life. And now they're saying that these abusers are someone you know and trust?
Trust.
What's up, Watchtower?
This is such a devastating article to Watchtower if you know and recognize what's really being stated here.
Now, the last paragraph, 23. As Jehovah's Witnesses, we view child sexual abuse as a gross sin. It's also a crime.
It's a crime.
And a wicked deed. Governed by the law of Christ. Our congregations do not shield perpetrators of abuse from the consequences of their sins.
Well, that's true. I mean, you know, if they go before a judge and a jury and they get, 20 years in prison, of course, because Watchtower's hands are tied at that moment in time. Of course they can't protect them, but they do everything they can to preempt it, to prevent it. Maybe they'll go to, maybe they'll go to the police station and give somebody a good character witness. Okay, since you give him a good character witness and since you're a pastor, we're going to let him out on his own recognizances and your own say-so, brother so-and-so, which I know, and then that idiot
6 months later
re-offends. You people are so ignorant, it's unbelievable how ignorant Watchtower has kept you people.
Yeah. Meanwhile, what we can do to help those who have suffered abuse. The next article will answer that question. So, there's a lot in that article, and I think this is huge because, my personal opinion, Watchtower is finally admitting that they have a plague.
It's a plague
of child abuse in their organization. And I want to mention that I actually was talking to Barbara Anderson on the phone the other day, and she said that in Australia, Watchtower has still not joined the redress for the Australian Royal Commission.
Which we already know.
Yeah, but I mean, they've been given all this time, and they're still not addressing this problem. In the meantime, all these kingdom halls in Australia are going up for sale. All these members are leaving. And we know for a fact that Jehovah's Witnesses are watching these hearings on YouTube.
We know
and
it.
it's still doing its job of waking them up. And they're walking away saying, wow, when a governing body member admits that they have a problem, like in the clip we showed, and then this is still going on and they're not letting us know, I'm done.
Well, here again, your Watchtower articles, Jehovah's Witnesses, have always been perceived as coming from Jehovah's Holy Spirit. Jehovah's Holy Spirit is telling you what? You have a plague of child abuse. And this plague just isn't a localized United States plague. It's not a localized Australian plague. It's not a localized South American plague. It's not a localized Canadian plague. It's not a local... Do you guys see what I'm getting to? It's worldwide. Because you Jehovah's Witnesses know, as much as I do, that every article written by the Watchtower and Bible Crap Society goes to every congregation in the world. And you're all going to study it because that's why you have a united brotherhood. Because we all study the same information at the same time. So they're telling you people that this plague, this devastation, this devastating plague is worldwide. It's not local to one little isolated congregation here and there. It's a worldwide plague, and it goes beyond the definition of epidemic. So for my mother, Joanne, and my cousin, Belinda, and her elder husband, Richard, you know, especially you, Belinda, that your parents were right when they started warning you about this organization and don't get involved because they have a child abuse problem. This is your humiliation. That's exactly what this is. And the only way that you can get away from the humiliation is to get the hell out and let this organization fall completely over the cliff into the abyss.
Well, I happen to know of several Jehovah's Witnesses and PMOs who have talked to their elders and asked them about this child abuse problem. And many of the elders have said, oh, well, this is just an isolated case.
Not no more.
This article proves them liars. This is not an isolated case. This has devastated. It's a plague. And Watchtower is now admitting this. So this is devastating the organization. And we know of several of more cases of child abuse who have been filed. Now let's not forget, not only did we have the Australian Royal Commission, now the UK Commission is starting investigating this. Finland, Belgium, the Netherlands, Russia, all of these countries are now investigating this. And it's about time, because for decades, this organization has been getting away with this.
Yes. I mean, for a person like me, talk about infecting the blankets with smallpox and giving them to the local community. Wink, wink. We all know what that means. If you've done your historical research, you'll see what happened and how that decimated the Native American population. You Jehovah's Witnesses have got to realize this is the same thing. This plague is devastating you. That's why your kingdom halls are emptying out. Hell, we just got an email from a friend in a Wisconsin area, and her indoctrinated family are whining and crying because there's only 30 people at their Sunday meetings. God, Jehovah's Witnesses, meanie, tickle parson. The doors are open. Your route to escape has been handed to you once again, because Watchtower has no choice but to put this in print. But they will use words that you will not readily identify, because you won't go and look up the meaning of the word plague or epidemic and educate yourself between the difference of the two meanings, because you think you know what the word plague means. You think you do, but you don't really see how devastating a word like plague means to an organization like Watchtower. It's devastating.
Well, that's the reason I thought to go look it up, because the news has been calling this measles outbreak an epidemic.
Right.
So it's like, okay, well, I'm going to look and see what they consider an epidemic, and it's like a couple hundred cases.
Big deal.
Okay, so an epidemic isn't that bad. A couple hundred cases. But a plague, this is devastating. And, the news last night was talking about the Ebola outbreak and how it's starting to spread in Africa. Now, if those people, fly, anywhere in the world and not know that they're actually infected, then, oh my God, this can become not only an epidemic, but a plague. And it was interesting because the video we were watching last night, we actually went on YouTube and we seen a video about this too, is that even though the virus, Ebola virus, is gone from your bloodstream and you think you're cured, they're finding the RNA virus still in your lungs, your brain cells, and other places that they didn't even know it could be hiding. So you could still be a carrier of this, even though you have been cured from Ebola virus.
And the thing is, when you talk about the difference between epidemic and plague, it recalls to mind that in epidemic, you still have time to do something to protect yourself. When it reaches to the proportion of plague, there's very little you can do.
Google Black Plague.
Yeah. Understand why Watchtower has chosen to use this word plague. It's in your organization, Jehovah's Witnesses, and they're telling you there's very little they can do to protect you. That's why they're washing their hands and they're telling you parents to protect your own kids. And the only way that you can guarantee 100% protection is get the hell out and shut the door behind you.
Yeah.
And this article should ease your conscience, because we've done another video just real recently about that one paragraph in the now defunct Reasoning from the Scriptures. When Watchtower is bashing other organized religions, they're telling you that, well, what a refreshing change. Really? You've gone right out of the frying pan and into the fire. And they state, if you love righteousness, you'll get out of these religions, aka Watchtower. But do you have that love of righteousness? Do you have that love of freedom that I've been screaming so loud about for so long now?
Yeah. Well, I'm going to bring up something. Last Tuesday, well, a week or so prior to that, Mike's friend, our friends, we've mentioned our Mormon friends before. And the husband just suddenly passed away. and we went to his funeral last Tuesday. Now, that was the first time going into a Mormon church and going to a Mormon funeral, and it was a little bit different than Watchtower.
You mean besides the time you did that wedding cake?
Well, I didn't actually go in the church.
church you went into the
I went
rec
into
room.
the gym
Yeah.
/ rec room,
Yeah.
you know, and I got chastised just for doing that, you know, just for doing a wedding cake. But in this funeral, it was a little bit different than, you know, Jehovah's Witnesses, because Jehovah's Witnesses will do like 5 minutes of the person and who their family are, and then go on to preach, you know,
Yeah.
to all of the non-JW family that are there. This was a little bit different. They actually had his son get up and give a wonderful eulogy. And then, of course, the bishop or pastor, whatever he was, got up and he started preaching a little bit. But it was interesting because I had just done a video, several months ago about a hierarchy member in the Mormon church. And this pastor brings up this guy and he starts talking about this wonderful speech he gave at their general conference. You know, we would know it as convention. And I just about came out of my seat, you know, and
Well,
Mike knew, you know.
I knew exactly what made her cringe.
Oh, and I'm just like, oh my God, he didn't really go there. This man, high up in the Mormon church that he mentioned and was praising his wonderful speech he gave, was just accused a few months ago of being a predator and sexually abusing children. But this told me that the Mormon members they have the same problem.
Yeah.
And they don't know that these, you know, their governing body, well, he was actually one of their 12 apostles. You know, that they don't call him the governing body. It's the 12 apostles that, you know, oversee their congregations and stuff. So that told me that these Mormons, you know, they aren't even aware of their 12 apostles, their governing body, are being accused of child abuse. And either they don't care, you know, and they think it's apostate lies, or they don't know.
Right. And that's why, you know, you're seeing ex-Mormons do a lot of videos right now.
Yeah.
All you got to do, guys, is just Google why I left the Baptist Church, why I left the Seventh-day Adventists, why I left Mormons,
Or
why
child
I
abuse.
left Jehovah's Witnesses.
Or just do the religion child abuse.
Which reminds me, I had just heard a couple days ago that the Archdiocese here in New Mexico, now keep in mind, we've done a couple of videos about the Archdiocese here in New Mexico. Well, I just found out the other day, they filed bankruptcy.
Yeah. Their child abuse problem is a plague in the Catholic Church. It has devastated the Catholic Church.
It is still devastating them, and it's still devastating Watchtower.
Yeah.
Meeny, meeny, tickle, parson. It's not just Watchtower, it's all organized religion, guys.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's organized politics. They're all doing it.
And I think Watchtower sees, like Michael
Meeny,
says, the
meeny,
writing
tinkle,
on the
parson.
wall, that this is so devastating to them, it's going to be impossible to recover from this.
Look, you guys have to remember something about meeny, meeny, tickle, parson, that, you know, we've all got sucked into believing, the hand mysteriously, appeared on the wall. I think what happened is because if you read that account very, very closely, if you read it very closely, you will see that when that hand appeared, everybody was drunk. We all know that when people are drunk out of their minds, they all see pink elephants. So what I think happened is somebody, while everybody was drunk, went ahead and wrote it on the wall, and they just didn't see the body connected to the hand. That's what happens when you get drunk. You see things that ain't there. So when, Let and all the governing body are out buying thousands of dollars worth of, booze, they're all not seeing what's in front of their eyes. We're manufacturing lies, and the Jehovah's Witnesses believe it.
That's getting annoying.
You just took my bobblehead away.
It's annoying.
Well, I know, but the thing is if it's annoying to you, just think about how annoying it is to those governing idiots. Because that's what I want to do. I want to annoy you, Jehovah's Witnesses.
But, I wonder, how does GB Let feel now when he said that a couple of years ago, And now he has been proven a liar,
Yep, he's a proof liar.
and they are admitting that this is a plague in their organization. And when you look at like the 2019 convention videos and the latest broadcast, you can see the stress in their face. And I mean, you can just feel the stress and frustration coming from the governing body, because you know they're the puppets that are put out there as the public face of Watchtower, and behind the scenes they know this devastating plague is killing them.
Yeah, they know it. This is their frustration coming out. And remember that scripture that says about those who like and carry on the lie. That's what these guys are doing. So you guys are you Jehovah's Witnesses are doing nothing but associating with men that are now self-confessed liars.
Well, didn't King David say, "I do not associate with wicked men of lies"?
And who hide what they are. And it doesn't matter whether King David penned that or somebody, you know, coming out of the desert somewhere. It doesn't matter who penned it. Those words are valid.
Yeah.
Because, and they're just as valid as the old saying, one rotten apple is going to, you know, rotten the whole bushel. It doesn't matter who wrote those words. It all has validation.
One lump of leaven?
A little leaven will ferment the whole cake. Look, it doesn't matter who said those words. It doesn't matter. They're valid. You Jehovah's Witnesses have got a plague running through your organization, and it is self-admitted. This goes beyond just some XJW saying, oh, this is the same thing that they've always said. No, it's not, because now they're using stronger language. But the Jehovah Witness sitting in that audience is not going to bother to look up the difference between plague and epidemic, because you think you know, you think you understand the meaning, but you don't.
Well, they could have used the word problem, and it would have, you know, kind of
softened it
a lot. But they chose not to use that word. They used plague, which is devastating and worldwide. So, oh my God, this is huge. And
very huge.
They've just handed us the gun with a lot of ammo.
Yeah. Yep. They're telling you Jehovah's Witnesses that the child abuse problem is the leaven. Yeah. Because it just continues to spread and continues to spread. And Watchtower, like Pilate, is washing his hands and saying it's your responsibility. This is a huge article. A huge, devastating article. Recognize that.
Yeah.
You know, I don't know what else to sit here and say other than just keep repeating the same things until you get it. Repetition for emphasis.
Or until our battery runs out.
It's just about out. So, you know what? Watchtower is telling you the plague is devastating them.
And it's your responsibility to watch your kids.
They're frustrated. They don't know what to do. And the reason why? Because so many ex-Jehovah's Witnesses are on YouTube. They're reviewing some of the research that even Kim and I have done, 5-6 years ago. The thing about the cross, the thing about, how Jehovah's Witnesses don't cry at memorials and all this stuff, which I think is fantastic, because this is all part of their problem. This is all part of their plague. You can see the lies, and you can see what they've done over the decades to try to hide and cover the lies.
Yeah, exactly.
So keep it up, because Watchtower does not know how to handle YouTube, because we know for a fact Jehovah's Witnesses are clicking. And like I've said before, Watchtower is its own enemy. My God, an article like this, and you idiots dare to use the word plague. But see, the Jehovah Witness sitting in the congregation, or that are just now reviewing it at their summer convention, are not going to hear that. That's why we need to hammer the word plague, because it's devastation. That's why they're selling their kingdom halls. That's why they're getting out of the business of religion and moving it to online.
Yeah.
And this is why they've relegated their preaching work to these stupid little shopping carts. And that has proved devastating because the apostates are there bringing it right there to them right now, to the point to where, you know, when a Jehovah's Witness and the little stupid little shopping cart see an ex-member coming, they pack up and leave. They can't handle it. Look how frustrating this is to this organization. They have completely lost control.
Wow, that was a lot to get through.
Yeah, it really is.
But I think we nailed it.
I think we did. Fist bump. You see, Watchtower, when you try to hide this crap, there's always going to be somebody around the corner to bring out what you're trying to hide.
Well, you may be able to hide something, you know, for years, but eventually it will come out.
It'll come out.
It'll come out. So our battery's almost out. So thank you for watching, and get this article. It's on jw.org, and it's the May 2019 study magazine, and this article is on page 8. So we hope you have a wonderful weekend, and I believe it's Sunday is Father's Day, so happy Father's Day
To all of you.
to all of you. So you have a great weekend. Bye.
Bye.